The male cardinal, one of the most beautiful birds, can be attracted to your home by putting out feed. Hello folks, my name is Leonard Leary III. I have spent a lifetime studying and photographing wildlife, especially animals and birds. The purpose of this tape is to give you some tips on how you can attract more birds to your home and how to identify the birds that you do attract. I will tell you about the birds' need for protective cover and water, and about the different kinds of bird feeders in houses. To help you identify other birds not shown here, you need a good bird identification book. The two best books available are Roger Torrey Peterson's Field Guide and The Golden Guide to Birds of North America. A good pair of binoculars will enable you to see more closely the field marks that will help you to identify the various birds. The binoculars must be able to be focused on subjects as close as 9 to 12 feet. Good binoculars are a joy to use. The first rule of feeding birds is that if you start to feed in the fall so the birds become dependent on your feeders, then you must continue to feed all winter. Although the birds will eat many different kinds of foods, such as peanut hearts, peanut butter, and cracked corn, the three foods that are most commonly fed are sunflower seeds, mixed sunflower and small seeds, and Niger or thistle seed. Shown here are two kinds of sunflower seeds, the black oil seeds and the gray striped ones. I find that the birds show no preference for one over the other, although the smaller birds can more easily open the smaller black oil seeds. Almost all of the birds love the sunflower seeds. The mixed seeds are also a good basic feed because some of the birds, like the junco and the white-throated sparrow, prefer the small milo and millet seeds. Being mixed with sunflower seeds, this provides a smorgasbord that will satisfy all of the birds. The Niger or thistle seed is a favorite of such birds as the goldfinches, purple finches, and the siskins. I also feed nectar for the hummingbirds in the summertime in suet all year long. Suet is eaten by all the woodpeckers as well as by such birds as the nuthatch, the chickadee, the titmouse, and other birds. The fat in the suet provides quick heat to help the birds withstand the cold. My home and the area surrounding it is a bird sanctuary. I've planted many kinds of trees and shrubs to give the birds food and the protections they need from the predatory hawks. No bird that comes to my bird feeders has to fly more than 4 to 6 feet to be in protective cover. I have lilac bushes on 3 corners of my home. There are dense bridal veil shrubs and small white pine trees immediately adjacent to the feeding area. These trees and shrubs provide a corridor of safety to and from the natural woodland that surrounds my home. Birds will not come to feeders where they must cross open areas of more than about 75 feet. Bird feeders do not have to be expensive or elaborate. They can be as simple as a piece of board with small sides to hold the seeds. These house finches are some of the most common birds at everyone's feeders. The males have a reddish head and breast, while the female looks like a brown streaked sparrow. The males have streaks on their sides, and this distinguishes them from the male purple finch, which is similar in color but does not have the streaks. The black-capped chickadee is one of the friendliest birds to visit your feeder. Although some of these chickadees are year-round residents, most of them come down from the north each winter. Male and female are identical in both size and coloration. These birds can be tamed to take seeds from your hand. The white-breasted nuthatch is a very energetic, very acrobatic bird, being one of the few birds that regularly climbs down a tree head first and often hangs upside down. It searches for insects and their eggs that may be hidden in the crevices of the tree's bark. It supplements this by coming to my feeders for the small mixed seeds, the sunflower seeds, and for suet. It is not a woodpecker, although many people think it is because they see the birds climbing up and down the trunks of trees. The male and female are identical. Because most people see the tufted titmouse at their feeders in the wintertime, they often assume that it is a northern bird that comes south each fall. In reality, the titmouse is a southern bird that has steadily expanded its range northward as our climate has moderated. Although some of the blue jays do migrate south from the more northern part of their range, most of them are year-round residents. The blue jay is a large, noisy, brash bird that often drives other birds from the feeders simply because it is larger. Its conspicuous feathered head crest helps to make positive identification of this bird easy. It is harder to tell the male from the female because they are both colored exactly alike. These male and female house finches have been joined at the seed feeder by a female cardinal. The cardinals, too, have a feathered crest. The female lacks the bright red feathers of the male, but has a basic olive tan coloration brushed with a reddish blush. Although her coloration is much more subdued than is the male's, she is an extremely beautiful bird. Both the male and female adult cardinals have the heavy, bright red beaks. Bird families can be identified and classified by the shapes of their beaks. The cardinal's comparatively short, wedge-shaped beak shows that it feeds mainly upon seeds, although in the summertime it also eats a lot of fruits and berries. Their beaks are exceptionally strong, and with it they can easily crack open the hard, dry shells of the sunflower seeds. Then, utilizing both their beaks and their tongues, they are able to remove the shell which they discard while swallowing the seed for food. Whereas many birds fly into the feeder, take one seed, and then fly off to eat it, the cardinal usually sits at the feeder, eating until something scares it off. Notice how this cardinal is constantly raising and lowering his crest, a sure sign of the bird's nervousness. Evening grosbeaks are primarily western birds that come east in the wintertime, migrating east and west instead of north and south. Gros is a French word for large, and like the cardinal, the grosbeak has a large, heavy beak designed to crack seeds. Like the cardinal, they too come into a feeder and sit there and eat until something larger scares them off. The grosbeaks are much more sociable than are the cardinals, and they often arrive at a feeder en masse, where they consume an enormous amount of feed. These birds are all females. The males have yellow on their head, and the yellow areas on the males' bodies are much brighter. So something larger, in the form of a gray squirrel, has just arrived on the scene. Although many birds prefer to feed on a flat, open shell feeder, the main disadvantage to such feeders is that the squirrels may drive off the birds and consume all the food. Because I enjoy watching the squirrels too, I don't mind their feeding at the shell feeders. The Carolina wrens, and I can't tell the male from the female, have a wide range in this country but are not common anywhere. I consider myself lucky to usually have a pair of these large wrens coming to my feeders. They really don't eat that many seeds, but they do eat the little specks of suet that the larger birds drop. They love crawling about my stacks of firewood where they feed upon hibernating insects and their eggs. Their jaunty little tails held aloft are characteristic of all the members of the wren family. This bird used to be called the slate-colored junco, but has recently been renamed as the dark-eyed junco. These birds breed and nest in the Canadian wilderness, then migrate south to winter in the northern tier of our United States. You can tell that it is a ground-dwelling bird by the fact that it jumps up and kicks backwards with both feet when it scratches for food. Because it has such a small beak, it is kicking aside the larger heavy-shelled sunflower seeds that it can't open while it searches for the much smaller seeds that it can handle. These birds have always been nicknamed the snowbirds because their appearance at people's feeders proclaims that winter is here and the snow will soon follow. Notice that this male's head, breast, and back are a dark grayish-black in coloration. This female's coloration is a brownish-gray. Both the male and the female have pinkish-colored beaks, but the male's feet are pinkish while the female's are dark. The tree sparrow is another bird that nests in the far north and spends the winter here in the United States. It too has a small bill so that it prefers the much smaller seeds as food. There are many different kinds of sparrows and they are often confusing. The identifying marks on this sparrow are its rusty-colored crown, the dark spot in the center of its gray breast, and its two-colored beak. The tree sparrows often travel in groups of 20 or more and are frequently found in the company of juncos. The white-throated sparrow is another northern bird that comes south to spend the winter with us. In addition to its white throat patch, the wide white line above each eye is another of its identifying characteristics. The bright yellow spot in front of its eyes is known as the lores. Both sexes are identical in coloration, and both have yellow lores all year, but the yellow area becomes much larger and brighter in the spring. This sparrow is also a ground dweller, scratching for its food by kicking with both of its feet at once. It prefers to be in very dense protective cover. In the spring it sings its very plaintive call that sounds like Old Sam Peabody, Peabody, Peabody. The mourning dove is a member of the pigeon family and is common and very numerous all across the United States. It is an exceedingly fast-flying bird, hitting speeds of better than 50 miles per hour. It has very stiff wing feathers that actually cause a whistling sound when the bird flies. It is called the mourning dove because of the soft, low, mournful call that the male gives when calling to the female. Although hundreds of thousands of these birds do migrate south each winter, equally large numbers stay up north. I have had as many as 78 of these birds coming into my feeders at one time. The doves flock up in the wintertime and are quite sociable. In the spring, after they have paired up with each pair having their own individual territories, the birds become very pugnacious. The starling was imported into this country from Europe in 1893. Today, it is the most numerous bird in North America, having a population of more than 350 million. In the wintertime, it has a dark bill, and the feathers on its breast and belly have little white darts or stars, hence the name starling. This bird is changing to its spring plumage, where its feathers will be dark and its bill a bright yellow. It is a cavity nesting bird and often drives away our more desirable native birds, such as the bluebird, from birdhouses and tree cavities. The male red-winged blackbird, shown here, is a real harbinger of spring. The males migrate up from the Gulf Coast region to their northern summer nesting range in late February or early March. The males arrive ahead of the females and select an individual territory from which they will chase all other males. The males define the boundaries of their territories by singing their loud song of conqueree. Here a blue jay joins the redwings after screaming its loud call of can't, can't, can't. Canada geese can be heard calling in the background. Again, a gray squirrel has driven the birds from the feeder. Gray squirrels are not usually aggressive to the birds, it's just that their large size causes the birds to fly off. So in addition to causing the birds to leave, the squirrels will consume a tremendous amount of seeds. See how fast they actually shell and eat the sunflower seeds. To make sure that the birds can get feed, and to make sure that the squirrels don't get all of it, I have several squirrel-proof bird feeders. These feeders have a counterweighted door that closes when the heavy squirrel gets on the perch, but that will remain open when the much lighter birds sit on it. Squirrels are very clever and very persistent, but there is just no way they can get seeds from this type of feeder. After trying half a dozen times with no success, the squirrels usually quit in frustration and won't try it again. It is very easy to see how the male rose-breasted grosbeak gets its name. Again, notice a very large, very strong bill that can easily crack the shells of all types of seeds. These birds can be found in the eastern half of North America, with their summer range extending on up into Canada. They migrate to the southern half of the United States for the winter. A cardinal flies in to join the grosbeak at the feeder. And then tufted titmice and black-capped chickadees come for seeds. Note that while the finches, grosbeaks, and the cardinal sit at the feeder and eat their fill, the titmice, the chickadees, and the nuthatches fly in and get one seed that they fly off with. Seeds that these birds don't eat immediately, they will hide in crevices in a tree's bark to be eaten at some future time. It is important to offer the birds fresh water to drink in the wintertime when all natural sources of water are frozen. This chickadee and the nuthatch are drinking from a very inexpensive, electrically heated water pan. These waterers can be purchased at bird supply stores. You can also get an inexpensive wire suet feeder. The type shown has the wire coated with plastic to prevent the birds from touching and sticking to the metal in extremely cold weather. The suet can be purchased at your butcher shop, or you can trim it from the meat you eat. Suet is a favorite food of the various woodpeckers. Shown is a small male downy woodpecker, which measures about 6 inches in total length. The red patch of feathers on the back of his crown identifies this bird as a male. Suet, or fat, is very high in carbohydrates, which allows the birds to generate a lot of internal heat, which is why most birds will eat suet during cold weather. Here we have the larger, male hairy woodpecker. Notice that the hairy woodpecker is 8 to 9 inches in total length. Note also how the bird uses its tail feathers as a brace while it is feeding. The hairy woodpecker also has a much longer bill than does the downy. Being the male, this hairy also has the red feathers on the crown of its head. This female hairy woodpecker is equal in size to the male, but she lacks the red feathers on the crown of her head. I often have as many as 3 pair of downy woodpeckers coming to my suet feeder, but I seldom have more than 1 pair of hairy woodpeckers. The red-bellied woodpeckers are often referred to as being ladder-backed woodpeckers because of the bars of black and white feathers that create the pattern on their backs. The bird being shown is the male and can be identified because his red streak of head feathers start right above his bill. This female's red head feathers start about 1 inch above the bill. Actually, it's very difficult to see the bird's red belly because the bird is usually clinging to a tree or the feeder with his red belly feathers pressed against whatever the bird is clinging to. I also have a seed feeder to attract the goldfinches. During the winter time, this male had a greenish-yellow back and belly feathers and did not have a black cap. This tape was shot during the first part of May, right after most of the males had assumed their new breeding plumage. Note that the male goldfinches on the right bottom and the middle left perches have not attained their black caps as yet, but they will very shortly. Although 16 species of hummingbird may be found in the United States, only one, the ruby-throated, is found east of the Mississippi River. This female ruby-throat is at a feeder filled with a liquid nectar that can be purchased at any pet, hardware, or feed store. In addition to attracting the birds to my home with food and water so I can photograph them, I often use a Johnny Stewart electronic game caller. I fasten the speaker to a tree limb just outside my living room window and have the caller inside the house. I then play the Stewart screech owl call. Small birds dislike all owls, which often feed upon them at night. When they hear the tape of the owl's call, they flock in to sound the alarm and to try to drive the owl from the area. This alerted white-breasted nuthatch is just one of the many birds nervously searching for an owl it can hear but can't see. Because there are not enough natural cavities in old trees, or enough abandoned woodpecker holes to supply the needs of all the cavity nesting birds, I have put up a great many birdhouses on my property. By doing so, I have increased the number of birds in my area and have reduced the number of harmful insects that the birds will consume. The bluebirds have used this house every year for many years. Here the female is bringing in a mouthful of nesting material. Although the bluebird is related to the robin and the thrush, it must build its nest inside a cavity. If the entrance hole is 1.5 inches in diameter, it will keep the starlings out. The male has a much deeper blue back and a more rusty-colored breast than the female. House wrens are friendly, busy, noisy little birds that like to nest near people's homes. If you put up birdhouses, the wrens are sure to move in. The male and female wren are identical in size and coloration, but the male does a lot more singing in defense of their territory. Tree swallows are also cavity nesting birds that are quick to occupy a birdhouse put up for them. Both the bluebird and the tree swallows are more likely to use your birdhouses if they face a fairly open area. The tree swallows seldom walk on the ground, but they are masters of flight, as they fly graceful arcs in the sky, catching and feeding upon all types of flying insects. The male and female are identical. They do not sing, but they often give out with their twittering call. This starling is raising its family in a nest box that I had put up for wood ducks. Although the starlings are often considered to be nuisance birds because they drive out our more desirable species, they do consume large quantities of insects and caterpillars that are injurious to our farm crops. These young starlings are just about ready to leave the nest box. Even though they will be capable of flying, they will still be dependent upon their parents for food for a period of about 1 week or more. Years ago, the phoebe nested on the walls of protected cliffsides or in the entrance to caves. Today, they prefer to nest around people's homes, garages, barns, or under bridges. I put a wooden shelf on my back porch to encourage them to nest there. The robin is probably our best-known bird. Almost everyone has seen and knows the robin. The robin will also build its nest on a platform provided for or on any exposed porch beam. However, they usually build their nests on a limb of a shrub or small tree. Robins' nests have a mud lining which makes them easy to identify. The male and female robins look very much alike, but the male's coloration is much darker than the female's, and the body is usually a little more plump. This catbird is sitting on a birdhouse, but these birds do not use them. Their call sounds like a cat meowing. The male and female are identical in size and coloration. Their nest is usually a bulky nest made of small twigs located in very dense shrubbery. In addition to worms, they feed their young insects and caterpillars as well as many kinds of fruits and berries. The mockingbird is a southern bird that has moved north as our climate has gradually become warmer. It is a mimic and can accurately imitate the call of any other bird that it hears. When it sings, it pours forth a medley of calls and songs in one long continuous string. The northern oriole constructs one of the most elaborate nests of any of our native birds. Using both her feet and her beak, the female weaves plant fibers, fluff, and scrounged string into a cloth-like fabric. The nest is a pendulous affair that may be 10 to 15 inches long and is exceptionally strong. The nest is usually fastened to twig tips high in the air. The purple grackle is basically a blackbird, but its feathers reflect light, which causes them to iridesce into different shades of blue, purple, and green. The bird has a long tail, which it often forms into a V when it flies. The males display to attract the females by erecting all of their feathers and spreading their wings and tail. Their call sounds like a rusty hinge. The brown-headed cowbirds are parasitic in that the female never incubates her own eggs or rears her own young. She sneaks into other birds' nests and lays her eggs there and then leaves. This male is displaying to attract the female. In my opinion, the wood thrush has the sweetest of all bird songs. It is a cousin to both the robin and the bluebird. When they are young, both of these birds have spotted breasts, like the thrush shown here, but lose their spots when they get their adult red-breasted coloration. This young yellow-shafted flicker is being raised in a hollow excavated in a dead tree by its parents. It is calling loudly for food. The flickers are a type of woodpecker, all of which feed upon insects that are injurious to trees. The male is seen here coming in with a mouthful of ants and grubs to feed the little ones. Although only one young bird is seen, there were 3 of them inside the hollow. I hope my efforts will be helpful in introducing you to a lifetime of pleasure observing birds.